Honey. Hi, baby.
Living my bucolic life, we have a city strife. Horses, chicks, and dogs, they are my neighbors. I could give some spin and move the horses into the barn, then time to move them out again. Red barns, green pastures, beautiful my houses. The view I see each day when I arise. This life pleases me, as it is plain to see. I'm living my bucolic life.
Hello everybody, welcome back. So I'm going to get started with my first homage to my ancestors' culture project. And this is going to be my flamenco dancer dress for an homage to my dad's Spanish side. So I'm going to show you the pattern I'm going to use. I'm not going to follow it strictly. I'm going to be making some tweaks so that I can wear it and not totally look like I'm wearing a costume. I just want to get the vibe of it. So anyway, it is a folkwear pattern. I do love them. And this is it. It is a flamenco dancer pattern, but you know, has a lot of fun things about the historical context and everything in here. You know, they always add more things into their patterns. But this pattern comes with 3 tiers of ruffles plus an underskirt with a big train of a ruffle in the back. I'm only going to do 1 ruffle, and I'm going to make my 1 ruffle longer so that it's more like the high-low effect, but it's just 1 ruffle. And the same with the sleeves. Instead of multiple layers of ruffles, I'm just going to do 1 longer one. Okay. Now I am going to use 2 different fabrics. I'm going to be using 1 fabric more for, it's like a sheath dress. You can see right here. Okay. For the structure of the dress itself, I'm going to be using this cotton. It's actually an upholstery fabric I've had for a while, but it's a cotton, very strong. I shouldn't have to line it. I'm hoping. I haven't even looked at the instructions yet. I don't know if they call for it or not, but it's comfortable. I have pre-washed it on hot, pre-dried it on hot, so hopefully all of the shrink and sizing and everything is out of that fabric. So with that, as you know, the princess seamed sheath and everything, what I'm going to be doing all of my ruffles out of is black lace. I have this big bolt of black lace. So this is doubling as a stash buster kind of project, you know. So I'm going to be using this for all of my ruffles. Honestly, I think that the combination is going to look really cool, but also I don't have to hem this. I can just cut it and let it go because all of the ruffles are cut circular, and so that's going to save me a whole lot of, you know, little handkerchief edge on a circle hems. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I think the combination is going to be fun. I want this dress to be fun. It's hard to be serious when you're wearing a flamenco dress, you know what I mean? But anyway, I haven't even opened it yet. Let me go ahead, open it, get a look at what we have to do, and I'll turn the camera back on. Okay, I just opened page 1 of the instructions, and look at this cutting layout page. Do you see all of those circles? Those are ruffles. Oh my goodness. So I'm glad I am simplifying that a little bit, but you know, they are cool. So I'm just going to set that aside for right now. And, well, that's way over onto page 7. Oh my goodness, lots of pages of instructions. Okay, so I am looking at this, and it gets a little bit confusing. So let me tip you a little bit so you can see what I'm looking at. On the pattern, there are these circles. these are ruffle pieces. P, Q, R, S, T, and U. Sometimes U, okay? So for the different sizes they have, and for the different tiers, they have you cut different quantities of these. So, like, for example, I am size large. It is what it is, no judgments on myself. So for the first row, which is this top one up here, okay, this first row, I would need to cut 1 P, 2 Q, 2 R, and 2 T's. And then, because the second row is going to be slightly wider, so you have more space to sew more ruffles, I would then cut 1 P, 2 Q's, 2 R's, 2 S's, and 1 T, and so on and so forth for the different layers. Because I want my skirt to just be one ruffle, I'm going to be modifying, okay? But because I'm going to be sewing my ruffle on at this point here, where the top ruffle is, I think what I'm going to do is start with this quantity, but because this length here is about 3 times the length of this top ruffle, and pretty much ignore that bottom one that's on the underskirt, because this length here is about 3 times the length of just this. What I'm thinking, excuse me, what I'm thinking is if I make my pieces 3 times larger, so say, you know, proportionally this is 1 inch, I made it actually like 3 inches and all the way around like this, I would actually end up with a ruffle that's the length that I want, but the upper part where I sew on is correct. And I have to do that for each piece because, as you can see, they gradually get longer as you go closer to the back, okay? And the center back is just the longest one. So you can see how it's shorter ruffles in the front, longer and longer ruffles in the back. Okay, so another thing is, this is a princess themed dress up here at the top. And so you make the dress, sew the first layer of ruffles to it, and then sew the first tier back underneath there. And then you sew the next layer of ruffles to this bottom, and then you sew that on. And then you sew the next layer of ruffles on the bottom here. So I might actually do something where I just add these two together, because I don't want this to be just sheer lace from this point down. That's a little too risky for me, but I might put this underneath it here. So lots to think about. So I'm thinking I may have to redraft these ruffle pieces, but I think even doing that, it's going to be easier and faster than doing all of this 3 times, if that makes any sense. So if you are here for the actual authentic way to make this pattern, this is not going to be it. You're going to get kind of the idea, but as you can see, we're changing things up quite a bit. Okay, so I've got my skirt ruffle pieces that I need to deal with. There's 2 that I am not. Piece U is only for that very bottom one that's attached onto like a slip kind of thing. And then piece S I don't need just because of my size. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do it on this piece P, because it's the smallest one and it fits in the camera frame. And what I do here, I'm going to do for the other skirt ruffle pieces also. So I'm going to need to basically enlarge this by a multiple of 3. And it's a circle. Some of them, like this one, are not even at the bottom. I'll deal with that when I'm doing this. I'll show you how I'll deal with that, but it's not that difficult. But basically, to start off with, I'm going to fold my circle in half, okay? And there is a seam line on each one, so I'm going to make that. a point that I'm folding in half, and then I'm going to fold it in half this way, and I'm doing it based on this center circle. So right about there. Okay, this line is lined up. I can see the bottom of the circle, and it's lined up there. All right. So now that I have that, before I even put it onto my lace, I'm going to go ahead and get some measurements and write them in on here so I don't have to think about it while I have lace all over my table. So first of all, this is 6.5 inches, okay? So 6.5 inches times 3 is the length that I'm going to need. If I was doing the one where one side was lower and the other side was shorter, I would just measure this side, multiply it by 3, put that down here, this side, multiply it by 3, and put it here. Okay, so I would still have this line coming down. So 6 times 3 is 18. A half times 3 is 1.5. So that means this is going to be 19.5 inches this way. Okay, so instead of that measurement, the front of my skirt is going to be this long. Okay, and I think that that's going to be a lot better for me. I will feel more comfortable that way. Now I'm going to measure it for each quarter. All right, so on this quarter, measuring from this point in the circle to the edge is, oh, well, we're going to call that almost 6 inches. It's just barely under. For math's sake, it's easier to say 6 inches. 6 times 3 is 18. So coming this way, I'm going to need 18 inches. Okay? And I'm hoping that's the same over here since it looks symmetrical. All right, so for my first one, piece P, I only need to cut one out. I have my fabric here as a single layer. And I had just kind of put it here for a second and looking at my measurements just to make sure I have it positioned in a good spot. Like I held my tape here. This is 17.25 inches. Put my finger here and made sure when I lay it down that I have enough room. Actually, I need to move it in a bit to hit that point. Same here, 19.5 inches. Yeah, that's going to fit there, and so on and so forth. So now that I know that this piece is in a good spot, I'm going to go ahead and pin it in place. I have a feeling that some of the bigger ruffles, I might run out of room, and I may end up having to sew 2 pieces of lace together to make the big ruffle. If I do that, I will show you later. For right now, I'm just hoping for the best. So I'm just kind of anchoring this piece in place here. And what I'm going to do is, I'll start over here. Hopefully you can see. If I put my tape here at the 17.25 mark, at the center circle, you cannot see that, it's over here. Okay, so 17.25 along this fold line at the center circle, right there. And just coming all the way out, I'm going to put a big pin over here at this point. And I'm trying to tip my camera here so you can see the way bottom down there, because I'm going to do the same thing right here where I need it 19.5. Put that tape here, follow it all the way down, and put a pin down there. From the quarter position, I can kind of blend them together, you know, at least that's my hope at this point. If it looks like I can't, then I'm going to have to do another measurement at the 1/8, you know, halfway between the quarter, just to get another point out here, okay? Same procedure. Take a line, measure it, multiply it by 3, follow it out, and put a pin out there. And then that should give me a very rough cutting edge that I can just clip around following pin to pin to pin all the way around. Okay, now that I have my circle pretty much cut out, where my cutting line is, and there's a cutting line on every single ruffle piece, I'm just going to kind of line that up with the edge here and go straight up and cut in on that cutting line all the way up here, and then once I get up here, I need to cut out this circle in the center here. Okay, so that is cut out now. This is open, and that is ruffle number, or letter P. I only needed one of those, so this is pretty much done for right now. So I can just set this whole thing aside and get the next one out. So you don't need to watch me cut out all of these ruffles. I'm going to do it the same way, making sure that I have my fabric. This does have a right and a wrong side. One side is more textured than the other. But the pieces that I'm cutting out too, I'm going to make sure that I have, you know, one of each, a mirror image of them. So anyway, let me get these cut out. And honestly, that's going to take me a while, so that might be all I get done today. But then, the next time I turn on the camera, we're going to need to figure out the ruffle situation for the sleeves too. Because I'm actually going to want my sleeves longer and not that poofy. So anyway, I will be back for you momentarily. For me, probably tomorrow. Okay, so you saw me cut out the first one. I went to lay out and cut out my second one, and my fabric is not big enough to be able to cut these circles out. It's just, these are getting too big. And so I'm at a crossroads. My fabric is, I think it's like 44 inch wide or something like that. I was lining up all of the circles. All the circles are the same size. Now this one has a little opening, but putting that aside, all these circles are the same size, including the first one that I already cut out. And this is the side that gets sewn onto the dress. And I'm thinking it would not be the end of the world if I made all of my ruffles basically just a little bit bigger, graduating to just a little bit bigger than the front one here. It's still going to be shorter in the front, longer in the back, just because where it's sewn on is shorter in the front and longer in the back. But to save having to piece a bunch of lace together, which honestly is not in my frame of mind right now, I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to put these pieces aside for right now and get that one out that I already did, just so you can see what I'm talking about here. So this is the one, you know, that fits on the lace here. And if I open it up, you can see it there. All right. So instead of cutting these pieces here, I'm just going to add them all together. That's one that I already cut, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I need to cut 6 more pieces just like this one. And I think that's going to be enough. It's actually going to be slightly too much because my last piece has that notch taken out of it, which I can deal with later. So just so you know, that is my decision. I will end up with 7 of these. I'm going to put all those other ruffle pieces away just so I don't lose them. And that's how it's going to go. Okay, so before I cut it, I was remembering that on that piece, one side was like an inch or 2 longer than the other side. So I'm cutting all of my other pieces the length of the longer side on here, which was 19.5 inches. And just to make my life a little bit easier, what I'm going to do is just, you know, cut my little, I have this folded into quarters. I actually have 2 layers folded into quarters. I'm going to mark where that little circle, a quarter circle is, measure it 19.5 inches from there, and then just cut as it's folded in a quarter, and that's going to be just fine. So what I mean is that circle is about 2.5 inches across. So, oops, almost spilled my drink there. If I measure 1.25 inches down each way, I'm just going to stick a little pin down there. 1.25 inches here. Okay, come on. That's where I'm going to cut my little half circle and then measure my 19.5 inches from this point and this point. Okay? Well, I can tell you, cutting out just in those circles cut on 1/4 went so fast that I'm actually going to go ahead and tackle cutting out the sleeves too, so that I can get all of my lace done, and then I can just put the lace away and work on the green. So looking at how the sleeves are going to go together, the sleeve ruffles just stack on top of each other, okay? So I think what I'm going to do is take the largest sleeve ruffle, which is the one on the bottom, and I want my sleeve ruffle to be longer than this. This is kind of like a little cap sleeve kind of thing. I actually want mine to be like, you know, a little bit longer, not all the way down to my elbow, but probably like right about there. And I'm thinking that I'll probably extend this by about 4 inches because I'm not sure exactly where this is going to hit because this gets sewn onto something else. But if I cut it 4 inches longer, at the worst I can just trim it up. And I think that that's going to be fine. So just like before, I'm going to put this on my lace, and at the 1/4 I'm going to mark it 4 inches bigger than what this is, okay, and then cut all the way around there. And again, this does have a slit where you need to open it and a circle that you need to cut out. So I'm going to go ahead and get just 2 of these done. I don't need these because I'm not stacking ruffles. I'm just doing one big one, so this can get put away also. But let me get these cut out. Okay, in my scrap, I actually had enough to make it 6 inches longer, so I'll definitely be able to trim it in. So I've got that all cut out on the outside. I'm just going to come in here, thereabouts, and trim up to the center, and then cut out this little centerpiece right here. And I think that is it for the lace part, because there is a tiny little piece up here that you sew the ruffle to, but it's underneath, and I'm going to be using that green fabric for that. Now for the green, looking at the size measurements on their chart, I'm actually pretty close to the measurements for their iconic large size. So I'm hoping that they have some ease built into this. But right now I'm planning on just cutting out the large size, but before I go too far into the project, because it is princess seams, you can take in a little here or there and things like that. So I am not making a mock-up of this, which may come back to bite me later. If it does, this is a hint of foreshadowing, but hopefully it will turn out well. So I'm going to go ahead and get these pieces cut out. Basically a standard princess seam. It is not lined. They have facings and things like that, so we don't have to worry about a lining, which is nice. This big long piece here is for a rose, and I actually have a very special fabric rose that I'm probably going to pin onto this when I try it on. So I might not make my own rose, but it does come with a pattern piece if you want to. Okay, while I'm cutting these pieces out, I want to show you, this is the 2 tiers that I was showing you earlier. There's ruffles sewn between them on the pattern. I want to combine them, and they're just going to work kind of like a lining for me. So what I have done is on this top one, and there's a front one and a back one. The back one's going to work just like this. It's just a lot bigger. So I'm going to show you this, but know that you do the same process for the back one if you're following along, okay? But I cut this top one along my size here, okay? And these have a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I need to overlap it by 1 inch, and that will give me the right placement, okay? So over here, I can make sure that this line here is staying lined up, all right? But I also want to see a spacing of 1 inch from this point on the bottom one, and oops, I moved everything, that point on the top one, which is right here, okay? I know you probably can't see, but trust me, it's overlapped by 1 inch over here. And I'm just going to pin this. I'm not going to tape it, because if I ever want to make this, you know, I don't want to rip this stuff. Now over here on this side, I also want to line up my size large cutting line so that they overlap by 1 inch right here. Okay, and if I put my ruler there, right there is about 1 inch. Okay, so now instead of cutting 2 separate pieces, I'm just going to be cutting 1, and it is on a fold. Okay, so for my front, I'm going to cut 1 big one of this on a fold, and then I have to overlap the 2 for the back. Let me go ahead and cut this one out according to my size, get it put away, and I'll show you what the back one looks like after I have it combined. Alright, so this is my back tiered pieces combined. Okay, it's still only overlapping by 1 inch. I just have extra paper back there. But it's the same thing. This is going to get cut on a fold also. For the back, there is a 3rd tier in the pattern pieces. I'm not dealing with that. That is part of the skirt. It's like a slip skirt that goes under the whole thing that has that last ruffle on it. And I'm not even going to be dealing with that. So these are the only 2 pieces that I'm using for this. Everything else I'm pretty much just going to cut out of my green fabric as is. So let me go ahead and do that. It's a regular princess seams, an assortment of facings and such, and I think that's, in general, that's about it. So let me deal with getting my tissue paper pieces cut out, and then if I have enough energy, I will cut out all of my green fabric tonight. If not, I'll do it tomorrow. Okay, welcome back. It's actually been a couple days, and in the meantime, while you haven't seen, I changed my mind on the fabric I'm going to be using. So this is actually what I have cut the main body part of my dress out of. It is 100% cotton. It is a light canvas. It's like a home deck, interior home deck fabric. So I did pre-wash it on hot, pre-dry it on hot, all of that kind of stuff. So it's very soft right now, sturdy. But I think it's going to go better with the black lace. I'm going to grab a little piece of it here. So here is the right side of that black lace, and I think that that's going to be fun. You know, I like that better than that light green. I'll use that green for something else another time. So let me go ahead and get all of my pieces together. My thought right now, oops, that's page 4, I need to back up a bit, is that I'm going to be constructing the princess seamed sheath dress part of the dress, you know, without the lower part first, and then try it on inside out so that then I can make adjustments to make it fit me better. Because that's one of the fun things about princess seam dresses, is you have so many fitting points that you can, you know, take in a little bit here, a little bit there, and it really make it fit your body. So many pages here. This is page, that's all cutting out. I don't need that anymore. Where is page 3? Aha! Okay, so this is where we're getting it started. Now remember, on these patterns, everything is a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And they say just finish your edges the way that you normally would. When you're stay stitching, they say anywhere between 1/8 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch is where you should stay stitch, so they give you a leeway there. Under stitching, they say at 1/16 of an inch, which is what I normally do. So that's good. So the first piece I'm going to get out is my center front bodice piece A. And because this is a very frayable 100% cotton, I am going to be serging all the way around every single piece. Before I do that, though, I need to change the thread on my serger from white to black. I pretty much only use white and black. it's just easier for me that way, and my serging shouldn't be visible from the outside. So let me go do that, get my center piece A out, serge all the way about it, and I will meet you back here. Okay, I've got it serged all the way around, and there are notches that you need to mark, especially on this front princess seam, because there's usually a little bit of easing there. There's also a dot up here at the very top, which should be, you know, right in the center, 1/2 inch in from each side. But I'm going to go ahead and mark that also, just so I have it. So like usual, punch holes in my pattern with the leather and my screw type leather hole punch. And then I just color through that little hole with my heat erasable pen, okay? So now I have that marked and my little notches are marked. And I need to get my side front piece and go ahead and get that serged around. And I'm going to go ahead and mark. I'm marking my notches with my pen instead of clipping them, because this fabric it is very loosely woven and it does want to fray a lot. So if I clip into it, even if I serge over those clips, I just don't want to deal with any issues, you know. So marking it does show up on the wrong side here, especially with red, so I'm good with that. So let me go ahead and get my piece B, get it serged around, and I'll be right back. And it's been a little bit since I've shown off how I serge, so I usually get a question or two each video, so I just use a basic, you know, 40-something-year-old serger. Nothing fancy, does the job. I only use one needle, and I use the needle closest to the blade, and that gives me a smaller serge. You see my flower pants here today. Love happy flower pants. So if I turn this light on, it does weird things with the camera, so we're just going to make this work. What I like to do is try not to cut off fabric, just skim my blade along the edge. So say this is an outside corner here. I'm just going to run it so that it's barely skimming the outside edge. Oops. Okay, I don't know if I can do this without the light on. Well, it won't let me. If I power it on, the light must come on. So anyway, I run it until the needle goes past the edge of my fabric. So the needle is just past it. Lift this up, turn it, and then come in. Okay, if this was an inside corner, I would just come until my blade is in danger of cutting the fabric, open it up like this, and continue straight. This is like an armhole, so it's the same thing, just turning. Okay, and I'm going to, again, outside corner comes so that my needle is just past where the fabric is. Okay, right there. Lift this up, pivot it, and go down. All right, so doing it that way, I'm going to turn that off here. Doing it that way, you can see I still maintain the integrity of my corners and everything, but all of this is encased, and that works really well. So there you go. And I wanted to show you, I'm probably going to be using Rosie today, but I'm kind of excited because this whole area, I'm going to be putting a huge mural up there. So I need to finish this project first, but that's probably going to be my next video, so I hope you're going to like that. And then I'll move my little souvenir picture somewhere else. Okay, so I need to go ahead and transfer all of my marks onto this. I think I have my camera way too zoomed in here. Okay, that is better. So we do have a dot up here, and I'm doing large, so I'm going to punch that out, transfer that over, you know, with my punch and everything. The same 3 notches that we put on the other one, it's very important that you transfer these over. Sometimes I'm kind of loosey-goosey about transferring some notches, but these front ones on a princess seam are pretty critical. Okay, and then over here there's a double notch, and that's not as bad. So let me get all of that transferred over on both of these side front pieces. Okay, just because I want to be able to see it better and show you better, I'm just sticking pins on my side front piece here where these notches are. That'll make life easier. And now up here, where there is a dot in the top center here, that is going to match up with this dot on my side front over here. So I'm sticking my pin through there and through this dot over here, and then pin it together so that the cut edges match up, okay? Now, since I have these pins sticking out, I can see where my notches are going to line up. So I'm just going to put that pin here, this pin here, and this pin here. Okay, now everything below this should match up really well. If it doesn't, kind of ease it together, you know, but it should. And it looks like I have a little bit extra there. I can ease that in, but before I do that, I want to make sure that all of this is going to be okay. Now the crucial point is between these two notches up here. So if I need to remove this, fluff that out so everything matches up, and then pin it together. It's only about 1/8 of an inch difference, which honestly could have been a marking error on my side. That's fine. So I'm going to go ahead and pin this all together. But again, it's these two top notches that we don't need to mess with yet. All right, so I've got this all pinned together, and then above the top notch and this dot, that should be nice and even, and it is, all right? So here is, from the other side, this, and you can see this is my center front. The side front wants to pooch out just a little bit. On a lot of patterns, they actually have you do stay stitching right here. I don't think that they call for it. They don't call for it. So we're going to hope for the best. But if you're not able to just stretch this up and make it fit, and I am because my fabric is very loosely woven, what you'll need to do is make a couple little clips here, only like 1/4 inch deep, and that'll give this top or center piece a little more flexibility. But like I said, this is a very soft fabric that is kind of loosely woven, so I can just kind of make it work this way. All right, so with this all matched up the way it needs to be, you know, down here, it's matching up well. I need to sew this seam at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I'm sewing it, I believe it is just from this dot down. I believe the little top part here stays open. It's hard to tell from their diagram, and they don't actually say. That's what I'm going to do, and if that's wrong, I can fix it later. So what I did here, I'm going to do over on this side also. Okay, so I'm over here at my ironing board, and as you can see, I've got these seams put in, and I need to press them open. So down at the bottom, it's pretty easy. You know, once you get up here where all of the curviness is, I'm going to use one of my pressing hams just to tuck that under there so I don't flatten anything out that I want to stay curvy. And I am just going to press these open all the way up to the top here. It's going to make things slightly odd where this little dot and everything are, but I can deal with that when it comes time to put the facing on. Okay, so it looks like that for right now. I'm just going to go ahead and pin this over onto my dress form and get out the dress center back and the dress side back pieces. Okay, so here's the thing. For the next set of instructions, what they want you to do is sew the center back up to a certain point and then baste it the rest of the way for a zipper, but they don't want you actually to put the zipper on until a couple pages later in instructions. I want to put my zipper in right now. To me, it's a lot easier to get that zipper in when you're only dealing with this much fabric than the entire dress. So it calls for a 22-inch zipper. I'm using a standard, not invisible, old school kind of regular zipper. So I have many much zippers, and this one hopefully is good. So let me get this pressed flat. Pull out my little staples here. I'm going to press it flat just a little bit because it's been folded up a lot and I want those to lay flat. And then get my center back pieces, which is piece D, get those serged all the way around, both of them, and then I'll meet you back here. Okay, so I've got my 2 back pieces and this lower part over here with the 2 notches and the single notch at the bottom. That's my center back. So I'm going to go ahead and line those up together. And I believe it's from the lower notch, yes. Okay, so basically from this lower notch down, you do just a regular seam. Okay, so regular seam here, back tack, you reinforce it here, change to a, oops, here it is, to a longer stitch length, and then do a basting stitch all the way up to the top here. All right. And then once you have that done, go ahead and press that seam open and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got that pressed open. I have this little pin here. Oh, she slid out. That was marking where that bottom notch was, just because my mark is underneath. Here we go, just to make sure everything is right. And yeah, that's where my bottom notch is, so we're good. All right, if you haven't seen me in a while, you might not be aware, but when I'm putting on zippers, I like to use a water-soluble basting tape. And so I'm going to be putting that tape on the right side of the zipper, the side with the little flap there. Okay, and I'm going to start it, just above where the base of that zipper is here. Okay, and run it all the way up on both sides of my zipper. Oops, you cannot see that. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm going to run it all the way up, stopping where the stop is right up here on both sides of my zipper. Now I need to tell you, there's probably a dozen ways to put on a zipper, at least. So this is just the way that I am choosing to do it today. And if you have a different way that works for you, please be my guest. You do you. Enjoy the process here, okay? But with all that being said, the way that I'm going to be putting this on today is the typical directions that are in the zipper packet. And I opened up and I saw that and it just gave me flashbacks, because that's honestly how I learned to sew, was reading the instructions in the packets and taking it from there many, many years ago when I was in high school. So anyhow, it's a great way to do it, and that's what we're going to be pretty much following today, okay? So, except for on the package, they don't say to use basting tape, but everything else. All right, so if I place my zipper face down, all right, and let me see here. If I say I'm going to follow their instructions, I really need to. I'm folding this in half, right sides together, but this bottom seam allowance I'm leaving sticking out, okay? This one here, that's the one we're going to be dealing with first. So if this zipper is face down, that means this is the tape over here that I'm going to pull off first. And it probably would have been a better idea if I had marked where that lower notch was on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right here. Okay, so where that pin is, that's where I'm going to line up just above the stop on this zipper. Okay, so anyhow, let me go ahead and pull the paper backing off of this side and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have that all removed, so I'm just going to flip it upside down, and I want the coils, I have it open, the coils of the zipper to be right next to the seam line, but still on the seam allowance, okay? So I'm going to start this right here and just kind of press it down all the way to the top, making sure my coils are lined up so that the outer edge of my coils are right next to where that seam is, okay? Like that. So there's the little seam line, it's right next to, okay? Let me finish this, pushing it down all the way up here. So they called for a 22-inch zipper, But when I place it, according to that notch, I'm a little bit low. I want this stop to be probably about 3/4 of an inch from the top, so kind of like lining up the top of this little pinked edge of my tape with the cut edge up here, but you can see I'm very low. So I'm going to go ahead and peel this up and replace it, starting at the top this time. And I think that that's going to work a little bit better for me. So just thought I would mention that. Okay, so now that I have it all put on there where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and zip this up. Oh, I just pulled off my stickiness. Well, pretend I'd have it pressed back down again. I'm going to zip it up and then come back and stitch it. So with a narrow foot, a zipper foot, something, I'm going to run a row of stitching along this edge. Can you even see that right here? I'm making sure I don't hit the coils, but not too far from it. But again, on this row, I'm only going through this seam allowance over here. Okay, so now that that is on there, I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. And don't worry, we will top stitch this on the outside when we're done. But at this point, this side over here kind of set the position. So I'm going to leave my zipper closed for right now. Go ahead and pull the paper backing off. And then with my two sides folded, right side together over here, and just this seam allowance sticking out, I'll go ahead, after I remove my paper, stick this down and make sure it's positioned correctly. Okay, so now that I have it just stuck with tape to this side over here, I'm going to do the same thing where with a narrow foot, I sew right along this edge, okay? So from here all the way down, and I'm going to go all the way beyond where the little stopper is, okay? Like on this side, you can see I came all the way just about to the bottom of the tape, but since it's just in the seam allowance, you can do that. Okay, so I know you can't see my stitches there, but there's one side, there's the other side, okay? So if I open this up flat, that's what it looks like. Now I need to look at where this stopper is here, and on the right side here, I'm going to stick a pin just above it, going across. Right about there. It's a little bit above it. You can see I'm almost an inch above it or so, but that's fine. So looking at the right side now, I'm going to do some top stitching, and I'm actually going to start at the bottom in the center seam here, come over a stitch or two, pivot, and go all the way up. And I can feel where my coils are. I want to make sure I'm probably going to be close to 1/8 of an inch away from the center line, but that's going to give me enough space to be free of the coils. And my foot, you can feel the ledge where they are, so I'm just going to run my foot all the way up, so it's kind of like resting against that texture of where the coils are. Now I wanted to show you over here, Rosie, if I can get the camera in without everything falling over here. I've already done the first, hang on, tighten this up. All right, I've already done the first row of stitching down this side, you know, starting at the bottom, working up. Now I'm coming back over, getting everything lined up at that same starting point down here, carefully putting my needle in, taking one, maybe two stitches on this side, leaving the needle down, pivot everything, okay, put it back down. You know what? I actually need to move it over just a hair more. That looks good. That looks good. I'm actually going to back it up and take one little back stitch here. And now I can run it all the way up. You can see I'm using a narrow foot, all different widths of narrow feet. If you want to use a regular zipper foot, that's great, you know, something that just has a one edge. You know, choose your weapon. For right now I'm using a 1/8 inch type, or it's actually a 1/16 inch size narrow foot, but because I'm spaced out from this edge about another 1/16, my edge stitching is going to actually end up being about 1/4 inch from that seam line. You know, if anybody cares. And I'm trying to pull it apart as I go. And if you can see, if you're about to get a little wrinkle or anything, take your time, push it in there so it doesn't exaggerate itself later. Now up here I have the little zipper tab under there, so I'm actually going to have to kind of balloon around it, which is not a big deal at all. And then I'm going to do a little back stitch up here at the top and call that good. Ooh, it looks like my bobbin just ran out. Oh no, it ran out like 2 inches low. Well, that's okay. I can put a new one in. You saw what I need to do. All right, so once this is done and I've got my 2 rows of stitching, I need to come back and pull out that basting stitch that's holding it all together underneath. Now on the instructions, when you first put this basting stitch in here, they tell you to make a little clip every 2 inches so that this process is a lot easier, but I did not do that. I usually skip that part, and then when I'm doing this part, I regret it, but you know, just when you're at this stage, take your time, you know, do what you need to do so that you can clip those threads and not rip into your fabric, you know. So I just do a little bit, kind of pull my tiny little folded edge over and just keep going all the way down till I get to this part way down here where it is reinforced at the very bottom edge. Okay, so I got it open all the way. Just double checking, everything looks great, it's centered. You know, I got some little threads here I need to pick off, but I'm gonna go ahead, pull this all the way up, give it a quick press just so that this is gonna wanna lay nice and flat here. And then we're gonna go ahead and get piece C, which is the side back pieces out. So I'm gonna go ahead, press this, get piece C serged all the way around, both of them, and I'll meet you back here. Okay, so I've got my 2 side back pieces. This is my center back piece, so we just need to get them sewed together. So I'm going to match up. There is a couple notches here. Here is my double notch. I need to get that matched up. Up here, it should match up at the top, all the way down. This should be an easy seam to match up. I'm gonna get it matched, sewn it a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then press this seam allowance open for both sides. Okay, so now that I have my back complete, my front complete, I'm going to sew them together. And it's just regular side seams. The only thing to pay attention to is that they want you to leave the top inch or so open. Okay, so I'm going to start my stitching right here, all the way down. Once I get them done, press the side seams open on both sides. Okay, all right, so welcome to the next day, and I wanted to show you how this is looking on the dress form. I just have my sleeves, you know, just kind of pinned together, or my shoulders, I should say. Now, just to let you know, if something fits this dress form really, really tight, it usually fits me well. This is actually fitting the dress form with a decent amount of ease in it. So I am expecting that it's actually going to fit me, again, with a decent amount of ease in it. But I kind of want that. I don't want a very super form-fitting princess seam dress, you know, because this comes all the way down here. Just because I want to be able to sit and breathe and eat and things like that. So having it a little bit looser is not going to bother me at all. I probably could have gotten away with doing a size smaller, you know, but why take that chance? Because it's always easier to make things smaller than make things bigger. So anyway, I have decided I'm just going to leave this as is. I'm not going to make any modifications on the princess seams. But if you're doing this and you want to, what I would suggest is try the whole dress on inside out so that these seams are on the outside, and then you can kind of see where you need to pinch it in, you know, and make those marks and everything so you can sew them exactly where you want. So anyhow, you can also see how short it is in the front here. Remember, I do have that other skirt piece that's going to go like this, plus it's going to have all of the lace ruffle and everything that's going to follow that that angle, so that's going to be fun. And I need to get started on the sleeves, but there's one thing I needed to decide on, and I'm going to show it to you on the drawing because it's going to be a little bit different from the pattern itself. Okay, so for the sleeves, have this football shaped piece that I cut out of my cotton fabric, and then of course my extended piece J, which is the longest ruffle. All right, now if you look at the way that the final sleeve looks, okay, you don't actually see this, you just see ruffles. But the way that it's that you would combine, the way that you would sew this if you were following their instructions is you would take your piece J, this big lace, and sew it to the bottom of your football, and then you put your other two ruffles on the top, so it kind of gives it something to anchor to. My big concern or thought right now is that the pattern is made so that this part here is sewn onto the dress, okay? And if I do it that way, oh, it's going to be hard to see on here. Basically, instead of just having the sleeve and ruffle start, I'm going to have the shoulder a little cap, you know, and it's only going to be like maybe 1.5 inches or so once my seam allowances are taken, a little cap, and then my ruffle underneath it. So that's what I'm going to do, just because that's how the pattern is made, but I'm not doing the upper ruffles, and I think that that's going to be okay. So my sleeve is going to end up looking kind of like this when I'm finished, okay? So all that being said, let me stick this aside, because before we do the sleeves, what I need to do is grab my dress off the dress form, and they want us to stay stitch around the top edge, okay? And you can see right here how they're wanting you to open up that seam allowance and everything and stay stitch over it. So I'm going to be careful to do that. So of course, starting and stopping, because I already have my zipper in. They do not yet in their drawing, but I do. So I'm going to start here, go all the way around, and then I'll be back to the table and we'll get to work on these sleeves. I wanted to show you, in order to press this so that it's laying out like they want for the stay stitching, this is my front, this is my center front, my shoulder. What you need to do is clip, this is the side front part, clip the seam allowance at the level where the top of this is, okay? And that way you can fold this back out flat. All right, so with that folded flat, the rest of the seam allowance is pressed open now. Now when I do my stay stitching, you know, at about 3/8 of an inch, I could just go like that. They are actually, I forgot to mention, because I'm going to do this right now, they are actually going to have you stitch the shoulder seams together first before you do the stay stitching. So it's, you know, the basic front to back here. So hang on while I fluff this out here. So on both sides, now that I have it pressed open like that, it'll be easier. Just matching these up. Stitch it at a 1/2 inch seam allowance and press that open for both of my shoulders. Okay, so at this point, I've got my little football shaped pieces here, and I have serged around them. There is a notch up here, and I transferred that over. That notch is right, you know, in the center. If you lose track, or if you iron it and it disappears, like I have been known to do, just put it in half. So since I still haven't decided if I'm even going to hem these lace sleeves or not, I might just leave them cut as is, because, you know, it's a stretchable lace. It's not going to fray. Oops, pull this pin out here at all. And I don't think that it really looks bad, just cut as is. So I might just leave it. If I leave it and later on down the road it really bothers me, I can always come back and serge like a rolled hem or something along the edge. But for right now, I am okay. So I need to, I lost track of my pattern pieces here. Okay. All right, so this is where we are. Now they are recommending putting interfacing. Well, you can't see that. They are recommending putting interfacing on this little football piece. If I was putting multiple layers on there, I could see that. For what I'm doing, just one layer of lace, I'm not going to put the interfacing on. You know, do what you feel is best for you. But what I need to do is do this little part here, where what they're having you do is clip into the circle of your ruffle so that it will lay straight. Because right now I have this little circle here, and they want me to take little snips. It says intervals of 1/2 inch, 3 inches deep. So, let's get some scissors here, and it's just so this is going to be able to flex. I'm just taking little snips like that so that this is going to be able to flex open. So I'm going to finish up this little circle here and do the other sleeve. Okay, so taking one of my sleeves, and my rough hands are catching on this lace, but that's okay. This is the right side up on my lace. If you can see, this side looks pretty flat. This side, you can see like the little nubs and things. So there is more texture on the right side. Okay, so opening this up so it is flat, I'm going to take my little football shape, and this is symmetrical. It's the same. This way is that way is that way. So just pick a side, and what I want to do is make sure that the center of my little circle-y bit here, and I'm going to stick a pin at that point so I can see it. Okay, that right here is going to match up with the little mark that I drew. Okay, and I need to put them right side together like that. All right, so now I should be able to come over here at the very side, and I need to sew it or pin it so that up here, let's see if I can get you in a little bit closer. If my seam allowance is at a 1/2 inch right here, okay, this is the point right there that I need to have level with this edge of the lace, okay? So it's wanting to curl up on me, so I'm just going to lay that flat. Put my cut edge down here, level, and right here you can see that where that little seam allowance line is where that lace starts. Hopefully you can see that. I'm going to stick a pin here. I'll do the same thing on this side over there, and then hopefully everything in between I should be able to just kind of push up so that it matches with the raw edge here. And I know that this is dark on dark. I have a feeling that's just going to be the way things are for this project. But once I have it all pinned, and I will probably look at my lacy sleeve part as I sew, I'm going to sew this at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. But if I can look at this side while I'm doing it, I can make sure that everything is going to be laying how I need it to. Okay, so before I go to the machine, hopefully you can see that's how I have it all laid out. All right. So 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then I'll press it and I'll be right back. And I'm going to do the same thing for the other sleeve also. Okay, getting these sleeves on is a bit of a challenge because I made my lace a lot longer than the pattern calls for. And so I have to sew it on differently. So let me show you. This is, of course, my armhole. This is the back with the zipper. This is the front. And up here where my shoulder seam is, I'm going to match up the center of my little football shaped piece here. Just drawing that little mark on there and putting them right side together. So flipping this up like this. Going to get it pinned. Oopsie, you didn't see that. So flipping it right side together like this to start with, and I am pinning both sides of that shoulder to keep the seam allowances down. Now, I already did the other side, and what I discovered is that for, you know, my length, which is much longer than what they call for, if I measure a distance that is 2 inches from where this bottom of my armhole fold line is, because remember, we have not sewn that yet. Well, that doesn't show up. I'm going to stick a pin right here. If I can mark where this is and use that as a placement position for the lace, it seems to work out okay. So I'm just going to, from this top, move it around, pin it down, okay, all the way until I get to this position right here where I have the pin marking that 2-inch slot. And I still have, you know, a couple more inches of lace. I'm just going to pull that out of the way so that when I sew it here, that's the point where it stops. Okay, so I just have it pinned right now, and hopefully you can see this last little bit of my ruffle is just going to be hanging free. If I wanted to, I could actually clip it at this point and just ease it in. You know, clip off some of this and just grate it so it blends with the bottom edge over here. And I might do that later, but for right now, I'm just going to sew it on like this. Sew at a 1/2-inch seam allowance from this point all the way over here. I did already sew this sleeve on, so you can kind of see what it's going to look like. I got my tiny little cap up here. And then this is the front here. So I have sleeve coming down, that bottom 4 inches into the underarm, no sleeve right there, and then the back looks like this, okay? So let me go ahead, get this one sewn on. I'm going to pop it back on the dress form to see what it looks like. Okay, so this is what they are looking like, which is fun. The straps themselves are not all the way to the shoulder. There's the little cap sleeve kind of thing, and then the sleeve. And I think it's falling pretty well. So down here at the very bottom of the armhole, of course, you know, that is open. But I'm going to have a nice big fluttery lace sleeve. So that's pretty cool. I think that I'm just going to leave it at that. There is a facing piece that we're going to be putting around that armhole. But for right now, I'm happy with the way this has turned out. So this piece, armhole binding AB, is what we're going to use as our little binding. It's basically 2-inch bias tape that we're going to be making. And so, yes, these were cut on a bias. And what I need to do is, with them like this, so I have wrong sides together, I need to fold it in half and press it like this so I have a nice folded edge with a crease, and then the 2 raw edges over here for both of my strips. Okay, so now with these armholes here, I'm just going to get this situated down the bottom. Remember, it's still open, about 1 inch or so. I'm going to open up this folded seam allowance here, match up the raw edges here, and it just kind of follows along all the way up around here, and then back down to this point. Just pinning the folded raw edges here. Okay, so I've got it all clipped on, a little bit extra, but I can just trim that off. I'm going to come back here and sew this, and I guess we're doing it at the 1/2-inch seam allowance again, which is about halfway up here, all the way around. Once you have that, they're going to want you to come back in and trim this seam allowance a little bit more. Okay, I haven't trimmed it yet. What I would suggest is before you trim, look at it on the right side and make sure everything is still looking like it should. Looking at this seam line, and it looks good. So on the inside, I just looked at the instructions, and they're wanting you to like top stitch the part below the ruffle one way, and then reorient it and top stitch the part above the ruffle another way. I'm not going to do that. Instead, I am just going to whip stitch this thing down. So over here is the folded edge, okay? All of this in my seam allowance here is what I'm going to be trimming. And let's see, I am going to take about half of that seam allowance off all the way around my armhole here, okay? Almost there. So now that I have it trimmed, this is still open down here, I'm just going to be able to fold this whole little folded facing to the inside. And I need to go get my clips again, but I should be able, it looks like I need to, hang on a second, trim this part here a little bit shorter. Come on, okay. Anyway, I should be able to fold that little band piece over like this, and then on the inside, I'm just going to whip stitch it down all the way, okay? Getting up here at the very top, like here is my shoulder seam, this is going to be in like that. And when I stitch it, I need to make sure I'm only going through this part, not my little cap sleeve part. So, this may take me a little bit to get all of this sewn and turned and whip stitched down. So give me a minute to do that, and then I'll be back. And we'll probably be working on the front and back facing at the top too. Okay, welcome to the next day. Lots of exciting things going on around here, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But first, I wanted to show you, this is the facing inside of my sleeve, okay? Now, I want to show you my new friend. This is my new little honey. She's probably about 4 years old. She's a little puppy mill mama. She's had all of her litters of puppies, and then they let them go to the rescue instead of putting them down. And so she's mine now. She's the sweetest little thing. What is she? A Cavalier King Charles, and just a love sponge. So she's getting used to the sewing room today, but just thought I would introduce her to you. So the next pieces we're going to do is going to be the neck facing. So there's two back facing pieces, one big front one cut on a fold. I am going to be fusing my usual very lightweight fusible interfacing on there. So let me go do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have my interfacing fused on there, and I'm matching up the shoulder seams. And I'm going to stitch across both of these at that 1/2 inch seam allowance that they call for across the top. And then I'm going to press those seam allowances open. Okay, so now that that is done, I need to finish off the outside edge of this. So what I'm going to do is what the instructions actually say, which is fold this outside edge in about 1/4 inch or so. And then I'm going to run a row of top stitching in here just to give it a nice finish that looks like that on the right side. I'm going to do that starting up here, going all the way around and ending up here. So I wanted to show you, I'm not really folding this ahead of time. I'm just kind of using my narrow foot there so I can see everything. Turning it up a little and coming in, you know. Getting down to this corner, it's not really critical that it's a perfectly mitered corner or anything like that. But I'm getting close to the bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and poke that little point just straight up. Push this down, and I'm probably going to need a pin to hold that. Okay, so first I put the tip up, then I went ahead and folded in this side. Get it down so it's holding that down. Lift up my presser foot. Fold this side in now, and yeah, it's kind of a tight spot there. Using a pin to help me. Then I put my presser foot back down, so I'm just going straight across. Do a couple stitches straight across, lift it up again, rotate it up again, and then come up this way. You don't have to go through all that, but it does make a nice flatter kind of point there. So see if I can get this so that I can actually bring that up to the camera. So looking at it, that's what it looks like. You know, it's as flat as I can get it. So I'm going to go ahead and finish doing this edge stitch, and I'll meet you back at the table. Okay, so back here at my table, we're going to get this put on. So first, with the right sides together, I'm going to match up the center front point here. Come on, fingers, work for me. All right, and then moving up to the shoulder seam, go ahead and match this seam I just put in here to the shoulder seam on the dress. And then coming all the way to the back. What they are saying, well, they're not making it terribly clear, but it looks like I need to, this is folded in 1/2 inch, and I need to leave this extended out beyond that 1/2 inch. I'm going to go ahead and pin that. We'll see how it matches up when I do the rest of this matching here. Okay, so this is the back. See how this is going to match together. It should match accurately, but it looks like I have a little bit of a bump going on here. So if I take that off, I actually have almost 1 inch hanging off the edge there. I'm just going to leave that for right now. I don't know why, but I want to try to match up the front and make sure that that's actually going to fit well. So from the center front point to the top shoulder, that does look like it's matching. So yay! Making sure my little seam allowance area there is good. When I was at my daughter's wedding, my younger daughter's wedding, my older daughter put these press-on nails on me, and they're actually staying on really well. I had to cut them shorter because I couldn't do anything, but I don't want to just tear them off. They're sticking on really, really well. She used great glue, I guess. But they're thick, so it's hard to pick pins up. So I'm just going to ignore that pin laying on my table for right now. Anyhow, let me just get this pinned on, and what I'm going to do is sew this on at the 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around. I'm still leaving that little bit sticking off the edge for right now. We'll deal with that later after I get this sewn on. So 1/2 inch all the way down at this point in the front here, just because I am not the best at eyeballing points, I'm going to go ahead and draw on where that should be. So putting my ruler 1/2 inch in there and 1/2 inch in here, I can see exactly where that stitching line is supposed to be. Everything else I can just use the gauge on my sewing machine. So I went back, and I'm dealing with these back pieces again because I did not like it sticking out a 1/2 inch. And I've got it pinned together now, so only my 1/2 inch is sticking out. I just needed to, you know, stretch this part out a little more and let this be a little more relaxed, and I can get that sewn on nicely now. So on both sides at the back, now I only have the 1/2 inch extra peeking out. Okay, I wanted to point something out while I was over at my machine. Remember, the underarm seams were still open, so I went ahead and stitched up that last inch or so, opened up the seam allowances here, and then just did a little row of stitching across there to lock them open and flat on both sides. So that is done. And we are going to be understitching this facing, but before I do that, I do need to come down here and clip up to, but not through that point, okay? Because to understitch this, I'm actually going to make some clips here so it's going to flex better. So give me a minute to do that. You know what? That is so thick. I'm going to pink this I'm going to pink about half this seam allowance off. And we're getting into thicker stuff here, so. Okay, so I've got it pinked, and now that I've done that, it's shorter, so it's going to be more flexible, not as bulky, all of that stuff. So to understitch this, I'm going to start over here on this side, and at my machine, I'm going to push this seam allowance underneath the facing part, okay? And then on top, I'm going to be looking at this side, and on the facing side, I'm going to be putting a row of stitching about 1/16 of an inch in. So here's the seam. I just flat stitch all the way around, but making sure that that is going through all of these seam allowances on the back. So all the way down to the center front point, and then back up the other side. Okay, so now that my understitching is in, I am just pressing it under. And I am going to come back and just whip stitch this edge so that I attach it to the dress. I'm going to do that all the way around. I know that it's technically not required. You can just attach it like at the princess seam lines and the upper edge if you want, you know, like here's a princess seam line, attach it here, here, up here, here, you know, you can do all of that, but for me, I just want to whip stitch the whole thing down because it is cotton, it's going to want to pull out, so it's going to be very similar to how this is being done, but it's just going to feel more secure to me. So you do you. If you don't want to, that is fine, but I am going to take a break from up here, take my needle and thread and my puppy dog downstairs and get this stitched on, and I will be back up later. Oh, I want to show you one thing though. When I am stitching, what I'm going to do is this piece that's sticking out, I need to fold that in so that when I stitch it, I can stitch it so that it's just, you know, right on the inside of those coils, so I can still stitch up all the way with my coils. Okay, but that's going to be hand stitched too. So there you go. Hello and welcome to the next day. So I want to show you, I've got my whip stitching done, so my facing is well behaved at this point. And on the instructions, they have this little thing that says, if the back is too low or it feels like your shoulders are falling off, they suggest putting in eyelets and a lacing. I won't know if I need that until I get it a little bit more done and try it on. I haven't tried it on yet, but that is an option that we might do. So right now what I need to start working on is getting all of those big lace ruffle pieces for the skirt put together. So let me move this aside for a second and go grab those pieces. Now, if you remember, when I was cutting these out, instead of cutting out totally different sizes and everything, I just cut them all out the same. So I'm not really going to have to pay attention to their little diagram of what goes where. But if you're doing that, this is their key, because you sew them together in a big circle. So you'll have like piece S is center back for size medium. Piece P is center front for size medium. And then those are on either side, those are on either side. So that's their key. But again, since I don't need to worry about that, I'm just going to go ahead and sew all of mine together in a big cylinder, right sides together, and a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I'll be right back. Okay, I've got them all sewn together here. And this thing is huge. It's like sewing together 7 little circle skirts. It's very full. So be very careful if you're doing this. Make sure that your ruffles don't get twisted and that they are all being sewn on the right side and everything. There are 7 of these pieces, and when I look at the diagram here, well, there are 7 basically big panels. There's 4 in the back and 3 in the front. And so I'm thinking, because I'm doing just each of one of my circles is the same size, I'm just going to use those as my landmarks and try to match it up that way, I'm thinking. But Well, let's just get started here. I have my dress upside down and inside out, and I'm going to stick my big ruffle inside of it because that's what they have in their diagram. Very big. This is going to be a wild dress to wear, I can tell you that. Now, they are asking you to press these seam allowances open and clip in about a ½ inch deep into this upper side before you pin it on. I'm actually going to kind of do that as I go because I'm not too sure. While I was sewing this, it did stretch a little bit, and it might have stretched out enough that it's all going to match up. All right, and so that will work. That will work. All right, so if I have it right sides together, then when I flip it down, because this skirt is hanging below my dress at this point, I'm going to see the right side of my seam here, okay? So that's what I need to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is just match up every seam line of my skirt flouncy piece here with that piece, that seam line of my upper sheath dress, princess seamed sheath dress, okay? Okay, I'm still working on pinning this on, and this is quite the monster here. I was reading the instructions as I was doing this, and basically it looks like if you match up your center front, your center back, and then you just kind of work it around from there. They're saying on here that your side seams might not necessarily match up, so, you know. And it says, adjust ruffles as you go. And what I am finding is that even though they ask you to clip to, you know, be able to expand it. I don't know if it's because my lace is a stretch lace or what, but I have extra. So instead of having too little fabric, sometimes I have too much. So basically I'm just adding a little pleat here and there and pinning that little pleat on, and that's going to be fine. No one is ever going to notice a tiny pleat and some black lace, I can tell you, with all of the fullness that's going to be going on here. Once I get this pinned on all the way, I am going to have to very carefully stitch it on. And when I stitch it on, I'm going to put it under my machine so that I'm looking here, because I want to be able to see this lace as I'm sewing it, to make sure that I don't have anything, you know, getting out of sorts and stuff like that, because that would be a pain to have to pick that out. So just letting you know, this is quite the process, and she's becoming quite a heavy dress already. She was very light before with just that little sheath part, but this adds a lot of volume. And this is cotton lace. It's got a decent heft to it, but it's not as heavy as like a real fabric. So I can imagine that if you're doing this out of a, you know, decently heavy fabric, it's going to have quite a bit of heft to it. So I can see then that would be why you might need this kind of back treatment. But one step at a time, let me get the skirt on, and then we'll see if I need to make that adjustment. Okay, I've got it sewn on, and it's wild. It's very wild. Now my back is just about floor length at this point. So that's interesting. I was thinking it was going to be a little bit shorter, but that's cool. That's cool. The front is obviously a little bit shorter, not as short as I intended. So I could make this shorter now by trimming all the way around, but I don't know if I'm up to that, honestly. And this thing is becoming quite cumbersome here, but it's looking neat. Now I need to do that underlayer now, this one here. So what I need to do is get my two pieces, and again, my two pieces are twice as long as theirs are, and sew them together at the side seams. But before I do that, I need to serge all the way around both of these pieces. So let me do that, and I will be right back. Okay, lots to organize on my table here. I have this serged around, side seams put in, and those seams pressed open. And then where these two pins are, that's marking the center back and this one is marking the center front. And I think if I get those 4 positions, the sides and the centers matched up first, then we can go ahead and, you know, try to go from there. All right, where is my zipper? That's gonna be an easy way to tell what is the center back. If I can find the zipper, here it is. Okay, so there is my zipper. So this seam here is center back, and I'm gonna need to slide this over it. So just kind of putting this over it like that, I think, because the lace part is going to get sandwiched in between these two. And if I still have right sides together, then this should still work out when I flip it right. So good deal. Sometimes I just need to double check myself like that. All right, so let me get this matched up, and I'm gonna, this is very heavy, so I'm gonna put 2 pins at each seam allowance, and I'm putting them through 3 times just to anchor that in. So that is my center back. I'm gonna do the same thing with my side seams and center front. So far it's looking like once I have those anchor points in, that everything matches up really well between it. And I'm thinking to myself, a smart person probably would have hemmed the bottom edge of this front piece first. I am obviously not that smart person, so, you know, we're just gonna make do. The front, the very front panel does not have a seam allowance in it, so I'm just folding that in half to find that center front point to match this up to. So once I have this whole thing pinned, I'm going to go back and stitch again over the same stitching line I used before, which was the 1/2 inch seam allowance, to anchor all 3 of these pieces together. Okay, I've got it sewn on, and a couple things. First of all, I did just the 1 seam. I think I'm going to come back and do a 2nd seam, you know, about halfway up that seam allowance, because this is so heavy. I think having an extra seam in there to reinforce it is going to be good. Also, this piece is a lot shorter than the lace piece, which is also good. So to hem this, because it is like a circular kind of edge here, I am just going to do a little narrow hem and kind of fold as I go and stitch that all the way around this bottom piece here. Okay, so here it is. I actually love this dress. Now, it's not like super skin tight. I've got plenty of room to move around in it, but I like that. That way I can move comfortably. And it is fun. It is so much fun. Usually on patterns, I shorten them about 4 inches to, you know, make up for my shorter legs, and I didn't do that this time. And you can see it is fairly long, you know, as the dancing dress would be in the back. If I wanted to, I could come back and just trim a couple inches off this lace length. I'm thinking I'm not going to right now. And remember in the back, it said that if it feels like it's falling off your shoulders, that you could lace it up the back. But I'm not feeling any of that. The dress is heavy enough that it hangs quite substantially, and I think that weight is keeping it on my shoulders. But honestly, it's a good neckline. It's not too low cut, but it's a nice flattering V shape. The back, it's not too low cut, you know. I like it. I like it a lot. It's not like an everyday dress, but it sure is a fun getting out kind of dress, you know? And it wasn't that difficult. Just a whole lot of circles and things like that. So anyhow, hope you liked it. Hope you like my nod to ancestors. Oh, I forgot I was going to get my rose. Hang on one second. I'm going to be right back. Okay, so this is my little fabric rose. Years ago, I actually made it out of a dress that my grandmother, my father's father, had, and I made them for a lot of people in the family after she had passed, because she is, you know, this side, and I'm going to try to throw a picture of her up in the something so you can see her. But anyway, I love this dress. Very comfortable, very fun, very different. You're not going to see it everywhere. So hope you liked it, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye. Honey. Hi, baby.
Living my bucolic life, every city strife. Horses, chicks, and dogs, they are my neighbors. I cook and some spin, and move the horses in to the barn. Then time to move them out again. Red barns, green pastures, beautiful white houses. The view I see each day when I arise. This life pleases me, as it is plain to see. I'm living my bucolic life.